claims he won a third term, but the opposition is contesting the result. The Biden administration is calling on the Maduro government to publish precinct-level voting results to ensure accountability. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down just a bit on the day, while the NASDAQ is up only about 25 points. And our KSL weather. We'll see sunshine, but also wildfire smoke. That's next. KSL News Time 101.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
When you're getting a new roof installed, you don't want to wonder, when are they going to be done? Or even worse, what are they doing up there? You'll never have to ask when you hire IWC Roofing, because their team of certified installers will be texting you pictures from the roof. You're going to know exactly what's going on and what you're getting for your money. And on most homes, they'll do the entire job in one day. In, out, cleaned up, and they'll even power wash your driveway just to say thank you. Now, you think you'd pay a premium for this level of service, but IWC does so many roofs. They get the material for less, and they pass the savings on to you. IWC is an Owens Corning certified platinum contractor. Of course, financing is available. Even better, their summer special, up to $2,000 off your quote. But you have to make the call. $2,000 off right now. Call IWC Roofing, 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690. Or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back, I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you're always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, Dan, we have a new crash. This is southbound I-15, multi-car crash just prior to 1600 North in Orem. Now, prior to that, we do have this other semi that is rolled over. This is affecting all westbound lanes at 3300 South, 300 West. You cannot get on the freeway at 33rd South. Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
We'll see wildfire smoke from California drifting through the Wasatch Front, dropping our air quality into the yellow and even the orange range. Highs in the mid-90s till Friday when we get back to 100. Right now we're at 91 degrees with sunshine. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com, where Utah's news, traffic, and weather stream.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as the dust continues to settle on several very hectic, very fast-moving weeks politically here in America, things are returning to a little bit of campaign as usual, although nothing is usual and nothing is normal as we look at the presidential race between the Democrats and the Republicans, and there's 99 days to go. So underneath all the headlines that have been flying at us for the last 3 weeks, what do we know? What don't we know? And what should we be watching in the 99 days ahead? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it has been a crazy couple of weeks, just altering everything as it relates to the presidential race rolling towards November. And today we're out of triple digits. We're down to 99 days. 99 days left until we get to the first Tuesday of November, and the ballots will be counted, and we'll see who ends up leading this country. So a lot of things have happened, and a lot of headlines have been written about what has happened over the last few weeks and the impact that it will have on the race for the White House in 2024. So now that the dust is settling just a little bit, we want to process a couple of things, think through a couple of things, and then give you a couple of things to look for in the days ahead so that you can divide the rage from the reason, that you can understand and get some context so you can connect the dots and make all of this make sense, if that is possible this time around. Let's start with the fact that Vice President Harris has raised over $200 million in the first week of her White House campaign. She signed up over 170,000 volunteers. So clearly, the evidence shows, the results shows there was a lot of pent up, I don't know if it's enthusiasm or excitement or just give us something different, but that has been unleashed in just a matter of 24 to 48 hours. And the dollars and cents don't lie. People were holding back, not donating to President Biden's campaign. And the moment that it was apparent that Vice President Harris would be the nominee, the floodgates opened up, all that enthusiasm burst out, and there was hope again on the Democratic side. They had kind of settled into some pretty depressing forms and formulations in terms of the strategy with President Biden at the top of the ticket. Now, all of that's changed. I think the more important number is not the dollars, but the volunteers. 170,000 people have signed up and showed up to volunteer for the Harris campaign. To me, that's the important number. That's the kind of enthusiasm that is not just the grass tops that you often see in donations, but the grassroots in terms of who's willing to go out and do the hard work and heavy lifting of campaigning. Knocking doors, getting people registered to vote, getting rallies coordinated, all of those things are the real nuts and bolts to a successful campaign. So the question then will be, is Vice President Harris an idea that everyone was just excited about the idea of not having President Biden at the top of the ticket? Is she an idea in terms of what's possible, or is she going to emerge, take all of this early motion and turn it into momentum that can be sustained for the next 99 days. So that's something to watch, to see how things start to settle as it gets into real campaign mode. We'll break that down just a little bit more as we go along in terms of the strategy and the structure. Interesting on the Republican side of the aisle, of course, they had their convention. They had their convention when Joe Biden was still at the top of the ticket, so they focused a lot on Joe Biden. And then, of course, he's no longer there, so a lot of that went for naught. And the other interesting thing is around the vice presidential slot. We'll talk about Vice President Harris's potential choice coming up in a second. But on the Republican side, very interesting. J.D. Vance, of course, being nominated by former President Trump to be his running mate. And for many people, myself included, that was a bit of a head scratcher. And I wondered, just as we have wondered about Vice President Harris being more of an idea than an actual person or a candidate, I think former President Trump fell in love with the idea of J.D. Vance, of someone who started in the Appalachian Mountains under really tough circumstances, made it to Yale, is a Marine, and the idea of all of that, I think, is what attracted him and attracted former President Trump to pick him as the nominee. In the days that have followed, again, as dust settles and people start to function in a role, you start to learn a lot more. And the idea of J.D. Vance versus the actuality of J.D. Vance has had a number of people on the Republican side of the aisle having a little bit of buyer's remorse. A lot of it quiet and behind the scenes, but some of that grumbling and rumbling is starting to get a little bit louder, even from members of Congress, saying that J.D. Vance didn't bring anything to the table. He didn't bring new voters into the potential realm to vote for the ticket, which is what you want in a vice presidential running mate, is someone who expands the map a little bit. And it is pretty clear that all those who would vote for the former president, J.D. Vance doesn't add any new players to that or new possibilities to that. So that will be interesting. Now, we're going to compare and contrast that to what the vice president is doing now as she gets to choose her vice president. All the indications that I'm hearing from sources inside D.C. is that she'll do that before next Monday. So it will be, my guess is it'll likely be this coming weekend. rolling into the 7th, because they do have some things they're going to try to do in terms of a virtual roll call and so on to button it up. So I suspect we will hear late this week, maybe over the weekend, who she has chosen. Now, will she choose someone who's an idea, or will she actually choose someone who can add some value to the ticket? If you were basing it on how does this help and what new voters does this bring into play, to me, the easy answer is Governor Josh Shapiro, Democratic governor of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is always a swing state. Pennsylvania is crucial to the Harris campaign's path to victory. They have to win Michigan. They've got to do well in Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania could be the real tipping point. So why not bring in a young, popular governor from Pennsylvania? That one seems to make a lot of sense in my book. There's other candidates I think that are also interesting on that side. As you look at Senator Kelly from Arizona. Arizona was also going to be a swing state. I think the challenge with Senator Kelly is he doesn't bring anything. Josh Shapiro just brings a positive energy with it. Senator Kelly is pretty dour and smart guy, good senator, but he's not one of those warm, fuzzy guys. He's not going to light it up on the campaign trail. And Vice President Harris has struggled in her own presidential run back in 2020 on the campaign trail. So she needs someone who can counter that. I don't think Senator Kelly fits the bill on that one. Of course, you could also look to North Carolina governor as a possibility, and we'll continue to vet a lot of those out to see how they're going to stack up and how they'll ultimately play in the end. And so as you look at this in terms of the strategy moving forward, here's the one thing I want you to be watching for and thinking about. There is always a natural tension between a president's office and the vice president's office. And usually the vice president's office is a little grumpy because they're either being ignored or they're not being given attention or they're not getting really good assignments. So there's always a tension when that plays out, especially in an election year, because everybody thinks they should be the top of the ticket. Now we have the very unique circumstances of having a reversal of roles. And so what will the Biden administration communication strategy be? Because I'm telling you, in the days and weeks ahead, there's going to be daylight between the policies and the positioning of Vice President Harris and President Biden. They're going to have to be different. And so then that creates conflict. We saw this a little preview of coming attractions in the visit from Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel last week. And coming out from the President Biden meeting, nothing said, no real statements to be had. And then, of course, Vice President Harris came out very strong and riled up and ruffled some feathers of the prime minister. And so you're going to have more of that. And so that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, because one of the things that the vice president has struggled with in her own office and in her own campaigns has been controlling the drama. She has turned over staff a lot, both in her presidential run and in her Senate office and in her vice president's office. She's gone through a number of communication managers, speech writers, and other key staff members, chiefs of staff. And so that's going to be an interesting undercurrent. And as always, it comes down to this idea of you rarely win a race because of your strengths and talents. You usually win because your opponent can't manage or control their weaknesses. And I think that's going to be a test, both for Vice President Harris and for former President Trump. They both have some strengths that are appealing that will be interesting to watch over the next 99 days. They both have some pretty glaring weaknesses that the other side will try to poke at and try to promote. And then they'll have their own problems internally. And how do they handle and navigate all of that? Because that's where the dust ultimately will settle and will give us a pretty clear view in terms of who will be the next president of the United States. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It could be almost anyone.
Harris will have to choose a running mate, and she will have to do it fast.
Who does Kamala Harris choose to round out the Democratic ticket? This fall, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance will take on Harris and, well, We'll find out. Listen to KSL for the short list and speculation. Your voice, your vote 2024 on KSL News Radio.
Discover the best of senior living at Trio Orem and Trio South Ogden. Today's older adults aren't wrapping up their life's journey, they're seeking a new one. And Trio Independent Living is here to help them do just that. With a smart, modern, and connected lifestyle, residents cultivate relationships and maximize independence through signature programs like Prime Fit Wellness that bring living well and well-being to life. Welcome to the new age of senior living. Schedule your visit at leisurecare.com/Utah today.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1904 $20 Gold Liberty coins have been found. These gorgeous 1904p gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 500 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling this secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you can own a piece of the hoard. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1904 Gold Liberty struck at the iconic Philadelphia Mint. With limited availability, you must call now. These 1904 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition with brilliant luster. That is 120 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-895-7664. Call now and you'll receive a free bonus, a $75 value free with every order. Call 1-800-895-7664 now to secure your 1904p $20 Gold Liberty coins before they sell out. That's 1-800-895-7664.
Trail mix, beef jerky, mixing all the soda flavors at the gas station soda machine. Snacks are better on the road. The gas is better when it's top tier. And the pit stop is better when there's a dinosaur there. Love the filler moments at a Sinclair gas station near you with DinoCare, our top tier gasoline. Some sweet and salty snacks for the commute, and a big green dino for the memories. Find a gas station near you at sinclairoil.com. Sinclair, fill up your life.
Any Hour Services can make sure your AC keeps you cool this summer. Whether you need a tune-up, repair, or just a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the things I love about radio is that we are all hearing it at the same time. One of the differences between that and just scrolling on your phone is that I don't know when that story was posted. Maybe an hour ago, maybe 3 days ago.
To your point about who wrote it, where did it come from, and is it dated information, our hope every day is that we can provide a more broad spectrum of information on a single topic that you can then take and make decisions on your own.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Hi, it's Tori DeVito. In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. And we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know, from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now, that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Jordan School District has joined a lawsuit against social media companies. Second, the U.S. State Department is skeptical of the results of Venezuela's election. And third, just what are sensitive electronics? Rocky Mountain Power wants us to unplug them during power outages. 91 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
In a landmark announcement this morning, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced the decision to create a medical school at Brigham Young University. The statement said that Brigham Young University is committed to academic excellence in targeted graduate disciplines traditionally focused on business and law. The First Presidency is pleased to announce the decision now to create a medical school at BYU. A major focus will be on international health issues affecting members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Church's worldwide humanitarian efforts. It went on to say that the plans for the medical school are underway. A lot of specific targets will be announced as they are set. It's envisioned that, unlike many medical schools, the BYU Medical School will be focused on teaching with research in areas of strategic importance to the Church. In time, the school will draw students from within and outside the United States. And finally, the statement read this morning, the BYU Medical School will not create its own hospital or hospital system. BYU and Intermountain Health are discussing a mutually beneficial clinic relationship. Also, it is anticipated that the medical school will seek collaborative relationships with various entities in Utah, including the University of Utah. So a significant announcement coming out today from the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ, talking about this medical school at Brigham Young University. And to me, there's so many interesting things in the context of all of this announcement. Of course, not a lot of details at this point, very early in releasing what those plans will look like. Comments from the president of Brigham Young University, Shane Reese, said that the university is creating a planning team to creating the medical school, and that as that information develops, that they will continue to release those things. So there's a lot of unknowns in this process, but I think there's some important messages and context in all of this. One, I do think it is significant that President Russell M. Nelson, president of the church, and his rich medical background, of course, as a world-renowned heart surgeon and real innovator in heart surgery, that this happened on his watch. Of course, he is just 6 weeks away from turning 100. And so the fact that this announcement would come during his time as the president of the church, I think, is noteworthy and significant. He clearly cares about that. And I think that's reflected in many of the things that the Church of Jesus Christ has been doing around the world. We know that over the last year, there has been over $1 billion spent on humanitarian efforts. And so this medical school seems to be in harmony with that and all of the efforts of the church globally. In terms of impacting health and impacting communities. Also interesting that it connects with the mission and many of the recent efforts by the Relief Society, of course, one of the oldest and largest women's organization in the world, really focused now with a very important task, dealing with hunger and nutrition around the world for children and women specifically. And so you can see the alignment of all of those missions and objectives coming into play with the announcement of the medical school at Brigham Young University. You can also see how this also fits in with much of the educational work that the Church of Jesus Christ has been involved in, specifically around the Pathway Worldwide program, which is in 180 countries, 41,000 students. and really trying to give people that upward mobility path that education brings. And so to me, this seems to be right in alignment with everything that the church has been doing in terms of education, in terms of health and wellness, and in building community. All of those things, I think, are very much in sync, and we will continue to monitor and watch as those announcements come out in terms of where this will be located specifically. Mention the partnership that this will not be a hospital or connected specifically with a healthcare provider. But one of the things that was interesting to me was the note that they would be looking for collaborative relationships, both here in the state and beyond, including the University of Utah. Interesting that the University of Utah did come out, of course, large medical school and hospital system, well-renowned around the country and across the world. And Taylor Randall, of course, is the president of the University of Utah. He came out with a statement as well, saying that in conversations with leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I've expressed the U's support for this additional investment in medical education and have committed to work together to serve our unique communities. And this is a leadership lesson that when the announcements first started coming out this morning, I thought it is so interesting between President Shane Reese, president of BYU, and Taylor Randall, president of the University of Utah. Both of them have a leadership style that is different from many in the academic world, where it is always a win over zero-sum game kind of competition, which often happens in higher education. But both President Reese and President Randall have this collaborative, there's enough and to spare mindset. And so a collaboration between what will be the medical school at Brigham Young University and the medical school at the University of Utah, the fact that they can collaborate, that they can see and envision a way to make things better, I think is indicative of both of them as leaders, their style, very much a let's link arms and see if we can advance things for all students, and then ultimately what they send out into the world as those graduates from the medical schools move into their professions and move back into their communities. Also noted that this is an invitation to the international community as well. I think that's also very interesting, that, again, kind of along the path with Pathway Worldwide, that you could bring in people from around the world to get a high-level, high-quality medical education and degree, and then go back out into the world and do that, whether that's through humanitarian efforts, whether it's going back to home country and being part of a practice or a hospital or whatever it might be. And so to me, this is how extraordinary things happen. It takes a vision and someone with a willingness to step forward and say, we can do this different, we can do this better. And I love the fact that here in the state of Utah, you can have both Brigham Young University and the University of Utah. The leaders of both institutions say, hey, we're not going to be competing against each other. We can actually come together and make things better for everyone. And to just bring that full circle, when Russell M. Nelson, president of the Church of Jesus Christ, was doing his research, I remember him commenting on how he shared his research, his colleagues, with a lot of the people they were competing with around the country. And someone once asked him, you shared your research and what you were learning with the people who were competing for the same funding, the same dollars, the same accolades. And President Nelson responded, well, we weren't competing against them. We were fighting against death and disease. And I think that same spirit will be part of the BYU Medical School, and we'll continue to track all of that here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. BYU is adding a medical school, and KSL News Radio's Heather Peterson has more on today's big announcement.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says BYU's medical school will focus on teaching with research in areas of strategic importance to the church. They'll largely be looking at international health issues that impact the church's members and its worldwide humanitarian mission. BYU will not be getting a hospital of its own, though. They're in talks with potential partners like Intermountain Health to figure out a clinical relationship.
There are no dates set at this time for when those big plans will get underway. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Former President Trump will be among those the FBI plans to interview in its investigation of the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania earlier this month. It says they're treating him like any other crime victim. Trump is among 450 people they're talking to. Your money at this moment, not a lot of movement in the markets either way today. And coming up, we'll be looking at... it looks like we'll see sunshine and smoke in the air as well. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
This song doesn't have a name, but if it did, it'd probably be something about togetherness, because it's a collaboration, not between pop stars and producers, but between music therapists and kids. Music therapy is a treatment that doesn't involve medication or needles, and it's been proven to help children manage pain and contribute to faster healing. So it shouldn't surprise you, it's our favorite song. And just one way we partner with you for a life well lived. Intermountain Health. The power of we.
In 2024, dating is a disaster. We've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, stuck in situationships. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Caitlin. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age.
Have you ever been on a coffee date with a man who just got sprung from prison?
Dating has been so dicey for us, we asked KSL, can we launch an all-new podcast about it?
You're not really dating when you're on the dating app.
Dating at Her Age. Brought to you by Mountain Home Services. A new episode drops every Thursday on KSLNewsRadio.com.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. When you use Angie for your home projects, you know all your jobs will be done well. Roof repair? Done well. Kitchen sink install? Done well. Deck upgrades? Done well. Electrical upgrade? Done well. Angie's been connecting homeowners with skilled pros for nearly 30 years, so we know the difference between done and done well. Hire high-quality, certified pros at Angie.com.
This radio commercial was made to convince you to stop speeding. We can't use siren sound effects on the radio, so we'll use other equally jarring sound effects to get your attention, like telling you that whether you drive a little over the speed limit or a lot, you can crash just the same. You could hurt yourself, or worse, others.
I'm at the scene of the collision.
And the damage you cause will be beyond repair. See? We didn't have to use crash or siren sounds after all. Speeding catches up with you. Brought to you by NHTSA.
Every business faces challenges, but complicated, expensive, and uncertain shipping shouldn't be one of them.
With USPS Ground Advantage from the United States Postal Service, you can avoid all the noise.
No more unexpected surcharges, hidden fees, or complex rate structures.
It's just easy, cost-effective, and dependable shipping. Tune your business's frequency to success and turn shipping to your advantage. Learn how at USPS.com/advantage. USPS Ground Advantage. Simple, affordable, reliable.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Michelle Rose.
Well, crews are still working on this turned over semi. This is westbound 3300 south. You will have to use an alternate. You cannot get onto the freeway to go northbound on 33rd South. Now, for drivers that are eastbound on I-80, we also have another multi-car crash there as well. It's blocking the two right lanes. This is between Kimball Junction and Silver Summit. Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Wildfire smoke from California will be drifting through the Wasatch Front today, dropping our air quality into the yellow and even the orange range. Highs in the mid-90s until Friday when we get back to 100. And right now we're at 93 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's Voice of Reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
One of the more disappointing aspects of modern politics is the polarization centered in the middle of our children's education. Public education has never been perfect in this country, not from the beginning, certainly not now. However, today the culture wars and bad administration and a host of other challenges have turned education into the ultimate political battleground. And sadly, in that context, everybody suffers. Education gets worse, not better. And we don't even have real conversations about policy and what policies will actually produce the best results for our students. Someone who is always in the middle of these conversations, Michael Brickman, adjunct fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he focuses on higher education and what I love most, the cutting-edge innovation in education reform. And he joins us from Maryland today. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So as we look at where we are, you noted in a piece with our friend Rick Hess from AEI as well, talking about how even in the aftermath of an attempted assassination where everyone was calling for calm and peace and unity, it didn't even take 24 hours for education to become the political ground zero again. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so let's back up a little bit. The federal government, as your listeners know, is trying to forgive as many student loans as possible. The problem is the Department of Education does not actually have the authority to do this. And common sense would tell you that political appointees can't just go spend hundreds of billions of dollars on their own. But if that wasn't enough, the Supreme Court told the Department of Education they can't do that back in June of last year. And a lot of people might think that that issue is done and settled because the Supreme Court has clearly said you can't go out and forgive those loans. But sadly, they're trying through any means necessary to go ahead and do just that. And what you're referring to is because states like Utah have sued to stop this latest effort, that plan to forgive, again, hundreds of billions of dollars of loans is now put on hold, and it would do all sorts of other bad things too. But fortunately, a couple of courts, including some Obama judges, have put it on hold. And so what did the Department of Education do in response? Well, they sent out an email to millions of borrowers that was extremely politicized. It called out Republicans. It talked about how they're trying to stop you from getting your loans forgiven. And by the way, they did this just days after the Trump assassination when the Biden-Harris campaign, which is now the Harris campaign, to its credit, they pulled their ads down for a couple of days out of respect. It was the right thing to do. But while their political ads were down, the federal government used taxpayer dollars to send a very politicized email, which is illegal, in support of their policy, which is also illegal.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting as you reference that. We often get to the Hatch Act on this show. Probably one of the few shows in America that can actually have a conversation about the Hatch Act. But it does require that you don't use your government office for the political stuff. There just has to be a separation there. I remember when I was a chief of staff in the Senate, we had to go outside to make phone calls if it was of a political nature, just to make sure that even the appearance of doing something political inside a government building wasn't violated. And here you had, in an interesting timing, if nothing else, going out with something very, very political. And to me, that's part of what prevents us from getting to the policy discussions, because we're just so stuck on the politics of it. And I want to get to some of your ideas in terms of what is the conversation that we should be having, because I know that innovation piece is such a core part of what you do every day.
Well, you're absolutely right. I so appreciate that you're talking about not just the problems. A lot of shows do that, but you're also talking about the solutions. And I think you're right that it's the politicized rhetoric that makes some of those solutions-focused conversations difficult. But it's also when you just go out and break the law and try to forgive hundreds of billions of dollars of loans, it's hard to have conversations either in the executive branch or really in the legislative branch where those conversations should be happening about what to actually do to fix those things. So in terms of solutions, there should be some accountability on student loans. So right now, if those loans are forgiven or if students just never pay them back because they're not getting a good job, their coursework didn't prepare them for the workforce like they hoped, there is absolutely no accountability on the colleges and universities. So instead, it would be nice if those college universities co-signed the loans. And they can come up with terms for their students that are as generous or not generous as they like, and then students can choose based on who gives them the best deal. And by the way, the schools that long-term provide the best educational outcomes for their students will be the ones that are able to provide the best deal because they'll get a lot of students. They'll get a lot of those students paying their loans back, and then there will be more money to allow future students to get a good deal. Yeah. So, it's that kind of skin in the game accountability you'd like to see. But really, let's give it to the schools. If the schools want to receive those loan dollars, they should have some stake in the loans actually being repaid.
Yeah, love that. Radical thinking. Actual competition in the marketplace, transparency, accountability. I think that's really where the conversation has to begin. Because otherwise we're just, prices continue to skyrocket and become even harder and harder for people to manage. And then more and more are not being prepared with what they need to go out and compete and succeed and prosper, have upward mobility, which is, I think, what this is supposed to be all about in the end. Give us one last thing before I let you go, Michael, that we should be thinking about, or maybe even something we should be watching for as we move into the fall. Again, there'll be a lot of the political pieces, but underneath those headlines, what's the education thing we should be listening for?
Well, just building off of that same theme of accountability and skin in the game, I know you look at the federal government, sometimes it just seems hopeless that they're ever going to get their act together and figure things out. But there actually are some things that states can do. And Texas, for example, has made 100% of the funding for their community and technical colleges contingent on how much better they prepare students for the workforce. So if you come in making minimum wage and you double your pay, then that means a lot more money goes to the community college that prepared them. And, Utah could do something similar. It takes bold leadership. It takes some guts to be able to change the funding formula like that. But it's made a huge difference in Texas in terms of student success, in terms of better offerings for the students, and it's something more states should do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also believe in a healthy dose of federalism to let this all play out in a little different way than the command and control coming out of our nation's capital. As always, Michael Brickman, great perspective, great insight, adjunct fellow at American Enterprise Institute. And Michael, we look forward to having you back to continue what I think is one of the most crucial of our crucial conversations, because if we don't get our education right, it's hard to get a lot of other things right for the future. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, that's Michael Brickman again joining us from American Enterprise Institute. Great perspective there in terms of how do we get to the real conversation. I think the path to the real conversation has to begin with some transparency and some accountability in terms of results in higher education. We'll continue that conversation when we come back.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. I want to tell you about our famous "You Don't Need a Warranty" warranty. That's right, it's a warranty you don't need, but we give it to you anyway. Let me explain. Most warranty problems for siding, gutters, and windows are caused by not installing stuff right in the first place. If you rush the work, cut corners, or use subpar materials, you're just begging for problems later. At RGS Exteriors, we don't tolerate careless workmanship. We slow down, focus on every detail, and use only the best materials. We prevent warranty work by doing the job right in the first place. That's why the 10-year everything guarantee we give you is also known as our You Don't Need a Warranty warranty. We absolutely will be there if you need to use it. But honestly, you probably will never have to. Done right the first time. That's the RGS way. For siding, gutters, and windows, call 801-280-3110 or visit us at rgsexteriors.com.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio, or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
100, 200, 300?
What you're hearing is a special offer being prepared just for you.
800, 900, 1000.
And it's from Brighton Bank. So let me explain. For a limited time, Brighton Bank's Cash Reward Extravaganza is offering up to $2,000 in cash rewards on qualifying deposits. So make a qualifying deposit at Brighton Bank and receive a cash reward. Build your financial future and receive up to $2,000 in cash rewards with a qualifying deposit at Brighton Bank. Reach your financial goals quicker with Brighton Bank. Well, you get the idea. With the Cash Reward Extravaganza, Brighton Bank continues a tradition of developing relationships and building communities for over 45 years.
1,800, 1,900, 2,000.
What kind of Cash Reward Extravaganza will you qualify for? Learn more online at brightonbank.com. brightonbank.com. Brighton Bank is FDIC insured. Some terms and conditions may apply. Program ends July 31st. Get details from your Brighton Bank professional.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
Tell me about it. Did you have any idea that was going on?
None. I mean, you saw Derek at the game last night, too. Did you have a clue?
No, but you know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do. Kids hear first about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
It can be hard to tell sometimes, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, bullying, violence, anything, you need to tell an adult. Mom or me, a teacher, coach, school counselor, someone you know and trust.
Dad, no kid is gonna tell an adult about that kind of stuff.
I get it, but if we don't know, we can't help. Speaking up about a problem, that's what helping a friend is all about.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. Be the someone who gives their time. Be the someone who lends an ear. Be the someone who takes a step. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN, asking you to join the fight against sexual violence and volunteer in your community. Log on to RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org, to learn how you can be the someone.
This message brought to you by the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network and this station.
Let me ask you a question. You have a best friend? How big would it shock you if somebody told you that your best friend just killed somebody?
911, what's your emergency?
Someone on the other line said they kidnapped my son, and they're demanding $500,000.
On September 12th, 1995, 12-year-old McKay Everett disappeared from his home in Conroe, Texas. It was a crime that shocked the community because the suspect was so unlikely, so unexpected.
Former high-ranking police official, he'd run for sheriff at one point.
Law enforcement personnel were pretty much split down the middle over whether or not he actually did this.
And to this day, McKay's mother, Paulette, still feels that justice was never truly served.
I've asked myself so many times, what in the world happened?
Ransom is available now. Listen at ransompodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, BYU is creating a new medical school. Its focus will be on international care. Second, the FBI plans to interview former President Trump as a witness in his attempted assassination. And third, developers are planning 1,000 affordable apartments on Salt Lake City's west side. 93 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, we often say that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it usually rhymes. And we're seeing that play out once again. Of course, President Biden shocked some, shrug of the shoulders for others, expected from even fewer when he announced his decision not to run for re-election. And while it's pretty unprecedented in modern politics, this has happened before. We've been here before. And there's some interesting lessons from one of our favorites on this show, President Calvin Coolidge, who decided he wouldn't run for re-election. So we want to dig in underneath the hood a little bit in terms of how that played out and what lessons we might draw from that today. To help us do that, as always, we turn to Jay Evenson, opinion editor for the Deseret News. And Jay, fantastic piece at Deseret.com. It was a century ago that a president, Calvin Coolidge, said, "Nah, I'm not going to do that again."
Yeah, thank you, Boyd. Almost exactly a century ago, it was August 2nd. Well, actually, it was 1927, so I guess it's about 97 years ago. But it was this time of year, and the more I looked into it, the more interesting it became. Calvin Coolidge was in South Dakota, and he was there for the groundbreaking of what we now know as Mount Rushmore, the busts of the president on Mount Rushmore, and he'd been to this ceremony. And I think the sculptor, knowing that the president was there, was trying to play to him, and he made some comment about maybe Mr. Coolidge, someday I can put your face on this mountain as well. Coolidge wasn't happy about that. He didn't like the whole idea of Rushmore because he believed that presidents were there to preside and not to rule, and he didn't think that it was smart that we fell in love with personalities. America is a country based on principles and law, not personalities. So not long after this groundbreaking, he summoned reporters to his temporary office in South Dakota, and he gave them each a typewritten note that said, "I do not choose to run in 1928," and that was it. There were no questions. He put on his coat. He put on his hat. Reporters said he had a broad smile on his face. And he walked into a waiting car and he drove off, and that was how he did that. Mr. Biden had a small letter, but I think Mr. Coolidge would have thought that was far too wordy.
Yeah, definitely too wordy. And one of the things that we love about Calvin Coolidge was just that whole concept of he really felt that the president and the presidency was to preside, not to rule. I think that's so important. A good friend of ours who you quote in your piece, historian Amity Schlaze, who has the best biography, I think, of all the biographies of Coolidge, and there aren't enough because there's so many lessons in there. But she pointed out to us on the show one time that just to show Coolidge's perspective of his role, his funeral for a former president of the United States, start to finish, under 15 minutes. I think that should be the model for all funerals. It got to the essence of the essence, and it probably would have been shorter, but they sang 2 hymns. And so, but he had that right perspective, and I think that's such an interesting thing for us to think about, not just for those who run for the highest office in the land, but I think that's important for every office in the land.
Right. Well, contrast that with our politics today. Now, Coolidge was at the very beginning of the mass market, mass media age. Radio had just come on the scene. I think he was probably, perhaps Warren Harding was the first radio president, but Coolidge was one of the first. So he had that at his disposal. But since then, with television and now the internet, everyone is trying to be a performer. Everyone is trying to be a personality. And we have candidates who worry about how they look, their voice, their sense of humor. And this is not new. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. You know, people thought if you watch the Nixon-Kennedy debates, you thought Kennedy won because Nixon didn't wear enough makeup and looked nervous and sickly. If you listened to it on the radio, you would have thought Nixon won because you were listening to it differently. So we've become used to this media age, and now we're at a time where people are throwing insults back and forth, and personality seems to be the most important thing. And Coolidge is saying, no, look, he once said he was happy to leave power because he could be relieved of the pretensions and delusions of public life.
Delusions being the operative word there.
Exactly. That's what. Yes.
So important. And I love the one quote about Coolidge, and you included this in your piece so powerfully that Coolidge had that conviction that the power of America lay not in great men, but in great institutions, and institutions in turn built on their own bedrock, which was the rock of principle. None of that has to do with politics. It's principles, and it's that foundation and those institutions. And to me, that we got to get the path and figure out the path back to that space.
Yes, and as you and I have often talked, there are three branches of government, and they are co-equal branches. And the legislative branch has kind of ceded a lot of its power and authority to the executive branch. And we need to get back to a place where they're making the laws, the executive is enforcing the laws, and the judicial is interpreting the laws according to the Constitution. And we've gotten away from that completely, and now everything is done by executive order of the president because Congress can't make up its mind or can't tackle the difficult issues.
Yeah.
We need to remind Congress that they're a co-equal branch with the executive.
Yeah, and I think that's so fascinating, especially on a day like today where you had President Biden clearly trying to stake out some ground for his last 6 months in office, talking about reforming, sweeping reforms to that institution, that co-equal branch of the Supreme Court with term limits, and which is interesting for a person who has been in political office for 50 years, saying that no one on the Supreme Court should be in for more than 18 years. I think that's a little bit of irony in all of that. And then, of course, where does the accountability come? And but I think that's an interesting thing to think about in terms of the politics of it versus the co-equal branches of it.
Yes, and of course it's always easy to make sweeping proposals when you know there's not a chance in the world that they're going to come to pass.
Because that's the politics, right?
Right, exactly. And of course, so he gives Kamala Harris something that she can run on, but it will never. We're never going to see term limits in the Supreme Court, and I'm glad we shouldn't have term limits. That was the whole idea, to make them as little affected by politics as possible. They serve for life, and you can't touch them, and that's the way it has to be if you want an independent judiciary.
Yeah, and those co-equal branches. Well, Jay Evenson, as always, appreciate your perspective and helping us navigate both the history and the present, so we can chart a little bit better future. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lloyd.
All right. Again, that's Jay Evenson from the Deseret News. And as always, great perspective. Check out his piece at Deseret.com talking about Calvin Coolidge. It was not quite a century ago, 97 years ago, that Calvin Coolidge, who was very popular, by the way, and by every account and estimation, would have been a pretty easy path for the re-elect there for Calvin Coolidge. And he walked away from it all, and he did it in an interesting way there at the groundbreaking for a monument that would contain the faces of great presidents of the past, and for him to ultimately say, nope, that's enough. I can move on, and the country can move on as well. And I think those things are really vital as we get back to it. And so I want to go back to that quote from Coolidge, that the power of America is not in great men or great women, but in great institutions in turn built on their own bedrock, the rock of principle. If we don't put principles first, we're going to end up with a lot of politics that plays out last and ugly, and not for the benefit of the American people. All right, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We will step aside for some top of the hour news, but don't go anywhere. We got a big hour number 2 coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio,
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour: housing developers planning to add more than 1,000 low-income apartments to Salt Lake City's west side. The project includes 7 new buildings along a 1-mile stretch between 900 West and 1800 West near North Temple. That's pending funding from federal, city, and state sources. Residents of Sandy were notified of a planned power outage, but some were confused when told to unplug sensitive electronics. Dave Eskelson with Rocky Mountain Power says it's mainly microchipped items that can be affected.
It's a wise precaution if you have, a sensitive computer device that, you don't have a surge protector on.
Eskelson says it was just a precaution. He says planned power outages rarely cause issues with power surges. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A knife attack on a children's dance class in northwest England today killed 2 children, injured 9 other people, according to police. Officials have arrested a 17-year-old boy in that incident. The event was a Taylor Swift-themed dance and yoga event for children 6 to 11 years old. Your money at this moment: the Dow Jones average down on the day right now, 49 points. The NASDAQ is up just 12. And our KSL weather. It'll be warming up, and the smoke eventually will be clearing out. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
This is Jay Broadbent from Alpine Home Medical. I'm excited to let you know we're currently having a summer sale on power scooters. As we celebrate the spirit of freedom and independence, we want to make sure you have the chance to experience it. We have a wide range of power scooters designed to enhance your mobility, and they're all available at a discounted price. These special offers only come around every couple of years, and once they're gone, they're gone. Come visit us at any of our 11 locations to take advantage of these fantastic deals, or you can browse our selection of discounted scooters on our website. We're committed to providing the 5-star experience. We can't wait to assist you in finding the perfect power scooter. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com. That's alpinehomemedical.com.
When it comes to my lifestyle and diet, I don't always make the smartest choices.
Touchdown! Woo! Hey, how about another round and some more chips?
But when it comes to taking care of my liver, I do make one very smart choice. Active liver tablets from New Nordic. I used to have real issues with my liver, and at my last checkup, my doc was concerned about my numbers. But since adding a once-a-day active liver tablet, my gut's better, I feel great, and my doctor's happy. I ask a lot of my liver, so the least I can do to say thanks is a daily dose of Active Liver.
You ask a lot of your liver, so give it the support it needs with Active Liver. You can find Active Liver at Amazon.com or ask for Active Liver at your local CVS. Or for a volume discount, visit NewNordicUSA.com. Go to new, NORDICUSA.com, Amazon, or ask for Active Liver at your local CVS.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we still have 33rd South headed westbound between 300 West and I-15 closed, so you cannot go northbound on I-15 at 33rd South. It was a semi-tractor trailer that tipped over with a load. They're working on trying to get that cleaned up still at this moment. There's also some restrictions if you're headed eastbound. It's narrowed down to 1 lane, so if you can just avoid that area, it's a good idea to do so. Also, with the crash eastbound I-80 between Kimball Junction and Silver Summit, that's cleared up. Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Wildfire smoke from California is drifting through the Wasatch Front. That'll drop our air quality into the yellow and even the orange range. Highs in the mid-90s until Friday when we get back up to 100. And right now, we're at 93 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The headlines continue to focus in the relationship between the United States and China, that the U.S. should battle and confront China by beefing things up on the economic front or even on the military front. But what if it just so happened that the best way to take on China was through faith? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is time to think again about what we think we know, and especially as it relates to the United States and China. For so often we have heard all the battles around technology, around the military, around tariffs and trade and a host of other things. But what if the real way to approach all of this came from a perspective of faith and faith diplomacy? Well, Knox Thames served in a special envoy as a special envoy to the State Department during the Obama and the Trump administrations, focusing on the challenge of religious persecution in China and in other countries around the world, and what the United States could do in relationship to that. His new book, Ending Persecution, Charting the Path to Global Religious Freedom, will actually come out September 1st, so get that marked on your calendar. That's going to be a great read. And Knox joins us from Washington, D.C. today. And Knox, welcome to the program.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Powerful piece written in the Dispatch, and people can check that out at thedispatch.com, talking about fighting China with faith. Give us the essence of that.
Well, we're in this global competition with the Chinese Communist Party vying for ways to influence nations. The U.S. approach is centered around our values of human rights and democracy. China has a very different approach, an atheistic communist regime. And we've seen the Chinese try to leverage their dollar diplomacy to win over the elites of different countries. But what I wrote about for the Dispatch in this Sunday essay was, well, the United States can certainly compete that way, and we should, but making positive investments in different societies to help their people. Because we're such a religious nation, and because so many nations of the world that are being sought for, their influence is being curried for, are deeply religious places, we have an advantage that the Chinese cannot compete with, because we value religious freedom, because we defend religious minorities both at home and abroad. This is something that can connect with billions of people in ways that the Chinese government cannot touch. In fact, they're antagonistic towards. And we need to be thinking about how to leverage this in a way to advance these values.
Yeah, it's so interesting. China really has had this belts and roads and a way to interact and get people on board or to cripple their own economies with debt. And so walk us through what this looks like, because I really believe the biggest threat to a dictator is faith and entrepreneurship. I think those two elements are what they actually fear more than they fear military might.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, the Chinese have been very savvy in how they've lifted their country up from a third world to first world status, but they've also been very astute observers, and they all remember the power of Pope John Paul II during the Cold War, and how faith was the beginning of the first brick that came out of the Iron Curtain that led to its downfall. And so they've been crushing different religious groups in China, independent Christians, Tibetan Buddhists, and both the Obama and the Trump administrations have said that they're committing a genocide against Uyghur Muslims because they're afraid of anything that guides people to a higher power beyond the Chinese Communist Party. But in this, they've developed something called the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a series of loans that seem really good up front, so that poor countries can get the interstate they've wanted or the train line, but they're crushing interest rates that come soon thereafter. And it's a way to kind of lure unsuspecting or purposely ignorant leaders into these deals for a quick payout, and then have long-term domination over other countries' foreign policy and domestic policies. We don't compete like that. We invest in good governance. But we don't have the Belt and Road. We do have the Bible Belt. And there is a band of countries around the world, which I call the Bible, Quran, and Gita Belt, where there's these people of deep faith, and that's an opportunity for us to connect with people in a different way, to compete on a different plane, a spiritual plane. And it's something that we're starting to realize, but we've got a lot more work to do to come up with a real strategy of engagement to round out our competition against the Chinese.
Yeah, I think that faith belt could be such a fascinating thing to really leverage and to show just the power of those kinds of principles and ideals and beliefs are the transforming things. I often say that faith in the future of the world begins with faith in the future of the world, starting with religious faith and freedom of religion. Talk to us a little bit about that developing strategy, because we know hope is important, especially in faith, but hope is not a strategy. So how do we get a strategy around faith as it relates to China?
Well, I think we've got all the pieces there. We've just got to put them together in a plan and apply it across administrations. For 25 years, we've had a unique part of our foreign policy is the protection and promotion of religious freedom abroad. I was a part of that for 20 years, working in different diplomatic roles. And I was very proud to, as an American representing our country, to carry these values forward. And it wins hearts and minds. I mean, I'll never forget being in Karachi, Pakistan, lecturing to a group of students at their Islamic college. And I got a standing ovation when I told them about how we protect the right of Muslim girls here in America to wear the headscarf, and we defend persecuted Muslims abroad. Like, they just didn't know. So part of it's just telling our good message about what we do, and also being honest about the challenges. Like, we're not perfect, but we strive towards perfection. Secondly, it's also how do we educate our diplomats, our service members, our development workers to understand the importance of engaging religious actors, religious communities in their activities, be it diplomatic, developmental, or just security related. The First Amendment doesn't prohibit us talking with religious communities or forming partnerships. It prohibits favoritism, but we should be seeing them as the important members of these local societies that they are, and not be too standoffish. There are some positive new strategies that we're seeing emerge through the Biden administration, but we just need to kind of amp them up, turn the dial up further, and weave it all together into a real clear vision of how we want to use the good story we have to tell and our comfort and natural affinity for people of faith as a way to bring countries closer to us.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, you noted in your piece some of the initiatives around the Joint Chiefs of Staff using military chaplains as part of that connective tissue between institutions of faith to government, to business, to community, to NGOs. And to me, it's that convening and that interconnective tissue that if we see that as a strength, and we see faith playing an important role and people being able to bring their whole authentic self into the public square for those conversations, that really can be game-changing, transformational for communities as well as countries.
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, that chaplain whose video link I included in the piece, I was emailing with him today, and he was telling me even more about his work on a certain Pacific Island nation, working with pastors and churches, and how he heard from them, how they're wary of Chinese involvement through the BRI, but their leaders are corrupt and they're getting payback. But it demonstrated this faith engagement, because of we're spiritual beings, because of the commonality of having something beyond ourselves that gives our lives purpose and meaning. You can have partnerships in ways that are impossible for the Chinese to compete with. Yeah. That are lasting, that are durable, and build deep ties of affinity that are going to be incredibly valuable and just good as well.
Fantastic perspective. It's a great piece. Check it out at The Dispatch, thedispatch.com, and then also be watching September 1st. The book is Ending Persecution, Charting the Path to Global Religious Freedom. And I just love this idea of valuing those differences, bringing that to the table. It may be the most powerful form of diplomacy that we can have and can actually transform not just communities and country, but our international interconnectedness as well. Knox Thames, of course, served a special envoy role at the State Department during the Obama and the Trump administration, and just focusing on some crucial conversations and one that we're often missing underneath the headlines. Knox, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Again, that's Knox Thames joining us, and I think it is the extraordinary advantage we have in this country over China. I don't think the Chinese dictator is as much concerned about our military or about our economic policy and economic might as he is about the faith, and the faith that can connect us to other countries and make that interconnected world a reality. I think that's the big fear, and faith diplomacy may be an interesting way to think again about what we think we know in our relationship with China. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It's been a crazy summer.
The shooter managed to get onto a roof.
Biden has already endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris.
It's a hot weather stretch.
The Olympics are coming back to Utah.
And no hint of slowing down. Tim and Amanda get you caught up on what happened overnight from 5 to 9. Dave and Debbie and Boyd Matheson take a deep dive on the day's biggest stories from 9 to 3. And Jeff Kaplan gives you his trademark Minute of News for your drive home.
We have you covered
all summer
on KSL News Radio.
When it's hot like this, air conditioners struggle to keep up. Parts are under more stress, and sometimes those parts fail. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and no one helps more homeowners maintain and repair their air conditioners than Any Hour Services. As a matter of fact, last year, over 32,000 homeowners called Any Hour Services for help maintaining and repairing their systems. Any Hour Services has over 100 HVAC technicians to help with everything from maintenance, repair, to installing a new system. This summer, there'll be a lot of people told they need to replace their air conditioner, and they'll wonder, do I really need to? If you're told you need to replace your air conditioner and you still have questions, Any Hour Services can give you a second opinion and let you know what options are available. Maybe it just needs a little maintenance or a small repair. Maybe it does need to be replaced, but if you don't feel good about being told you need to replace your air conditioner, don't ignore those feelings. Call Any Hour Services for help with air conditioner maintenance, repair, or to schedule a free second opinion. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Couple of quick questions. How long have you been dealing with arthritis pain? And how much have you been giving up in your life because of it? Have you tried steroids or even surgery only to find that you have different pain on the other side of it? Look, it's time for you to try something different. There are exciting new cellular therapies out there that can give you some lasting relief, and QC Kinetics is now helping patients like you every day with advanced regenerative medicine that accelerates your own body's healing properties and revitalizes your joints so that you can move again and do the things that you enjoy doing with your family. QC Kinetics medical professionals have arrived in Mill Creek, Provo, and Bountiful, and they are ready to help deliver that relief and get you your life back. The future of medicine is now. Call this number. See if they can help you with a free consultation. 385-766-1987. Call QC Kinetics, 385-766-1987. It's 385-766-1987.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
Gotta change my oil.
How about Valvoline Restore and Protect? It restores and protects your engine to run like new.
Get in zone.
It restores your engine to like factory clean?
And protects.
Get in zone.
So Valvoline Restore and Protect restores and protects.
Now you can get 5 quarts with an STP extended life oil filter for $37.99.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, developers unveiled plans for 1,000 new affordable housing units on Salt Lake City's west side. Second, Rocky Mountain Power has some advice on what to turn off when the power goes out. And third, 2 children were killed, 9 other people injured in a stabbing incident in northwestern England. 95 degrees and sunny right now. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Well, this morning, in an opinion piece written for the Washington Post, President Joe Biden laid out his plan to reform our nation's Supreme Court. He called out some of the recent rulings of the court, saying these are not normal and that it was impacting the freedoms of all Americans. And so this is an interesting one to look at, both in terms of what got the president to that point, where he's been in the past, and then what it actually means moving forward. Of course, whenever we're talking about anything impacting the Supreme Court, we always turn to Kelsey Dallas from the Deseret News. And Kelsey, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Always happy to be on.
All right, so let's start with first, what is it that the president is proposing? Let's get into some of the nuts and bolts there, and then we'll break it down.
He has three policy proposals. One is a term limit for Supreme Court justices. Another is an externally enforceable ethics code. And last but not least is a update on presidential immunity, basically changing what the Supreme Court ruled last month.
All right. And so very interesting, all three components to that. I thought the irony of the first part of the proposal, we just have to note it, that this proposal of 18 years is an interesting number for a few reasons. We'll let you break that down. But I do think this is one where the president is straining just a little bit, that if he says that the Supreme Court justices 18 years is enough to be in there, it shouldn't be lifetime. For the president who's been in office for 50 years and is 81 and not term limited, I think is one that's going to be a little hard to swallow for folks.
Yeah, the piece that Biden wrote for the Washington Post talks about the president being term limited, so 2 terms. But as you noted, there's no limit to your political career. So you could serve in the Senate for a long time, the House for a long time, transition from serving in Congress to being in the White House, be in the White House as vice president and then president. And we've seen all that in Biden's own career. And so, yes, it maybe sounds a little strange coming from him to say that you should only serve on the Supreme Court for 18 years. But I thought it was interesting that the op-ed pointed out that it's quite normal in constitutional democracies around the world for justices on the high court to only be able to serve a specific length of time. And so the U.S. actually stands out for saying it's a lifetime appointment.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, too, in terms of the three co-equal branches of government. I think that's an interesting component to it as well, and that the court has always been the one, at least from the founders' perspective, that had to really be above reproach. So I think a lot of these things get interesting as those start to play out and what the politics of it is. Let's look at the reality of it in terms of the path. Clearly, President Biden wanted to say, hey, I'm still in the job. I'm still doing things. This is something I'm going to focus on. But we know with a division in Congress, with the Republicans controlling the House, the Democrats the Senate, and all of the House running for re-election, this isn't likely to get a whole lot of airtime or a whole lot of play between now and the first Tuesday of November.
I think we can say almost certainly that it won't be able to move forward practically because Congress won't have the time or interest in taking this on. But I think that it's interesting that you noted it won't even really get airtime because there's just so much to talk about in politics news with the election, but also with other policy debates. So I found myself this morning wondering sort of what is the point of this announcement. It's like Biden wanted to put his flag down on this issue at a moment when his flag doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah, and does this give the vice president? Does it give her a flag to wave, so to speak, or to say, look, I agree with the president. We need to get after this at a time where there is a lot of division in terms of the court, and obviously it's a conservative-leaning court at the moment. And so does that give a political opportunity to the Harris campaign?
Well, these are pretty broad recommendations, and so Harris can certainly run with them, but I don't think that they're any different than her own team would come up with. I will say that Biden points out public polling about people being unhappy with the Supreme Court, so there's certainly interest in making adjustments, but it's not as if this is some revolutionary bipartisan approach that now Harrison can run with. It's just a list of of recommendations that are probably pretty similar to what any Democrat politician would come up with.
Yeah. And then finally, give us just a little insight on the immunity piece of this. It's obviously the one that's probably most directly pointed at the former president and the current court in terms of their ruling. How does that play out?
That one sticks out compared to the other two because the other two proposals would be able to be put in place by sort of a regular proposal in front of the Senate or the House going through both chambers. Okay, now it's been passed. What Biden is suggesting on presidential immunity would actually require a constitutional amendment, meaning lots and lots of work, lots and lots of whipping up support. And it's sort of odd to think about that being done in response to a Supreme Court ruling where you have to activate the entire nation to undo that ruling. And so that is a piece that looks specifically at the presidential immunity ruling dealing with former President Donald Trump rather than overall trends involving the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think going with 2 out of 3 might have been a better strategy in terms of how that all plays out for the president. Anything else that sticks out to you or any of the other people that you've been talking to in terms of what does this really mean? What messages are really being sent?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the presidential immunity one because even in the op-ed, that reads a little bit differently. That critique reads a bit differently than the critique that goes into the other two proposals because Biden is saying he's really unhappy with that ruling. That ruling threatens the future of our democracy. He also references the decision in 2022 overturning Roe v. Wade, saying that that's dangerous. But those claims are very politicized claims. That's the more liberal perspective on the court. Whereas I think that there's discomfort with the Supreme Court or questions about things like term limits and ethics that come from both sides of the aisle. And so like you mentioned, sticking with term limits and with a code of conduct might have been something that everybody could get excited about. But when you throw in this intense anger about the presidential immunity ruling, it feels very political.
Yeah, and I think that's the big challenge for that one. But an interesting way to start a Monday. And as the dust continues to settle in the transitions and the changes that have been happening on the political side of the race, this is always interesting to get back to focusing on some of the other branches of government that we've got to make sure we maintain co-equal being important in all of that. Kelsey Dallas, as always, love your perspective. Thanks for joining us and giving us some insight in what's happening, especially as it relates to the Supreme Court. All right, that's Kelsey Dallas joining us today, and always love Kelsey's perspective. She had a nice piece at Deseret.com you can check out, and it was interesting. I love the fact that Kelsey pointed out just even the change of tone in the sections of this opinion piece. Again, he wrote it for the Washington Post, and he laid out these 3 proposals relating to term limits, a code of conduct for the Supreme Court, and then dealing with this specific ruling by the current court dealing with presidential immunity, and went on and railed against some of the other decisions that the court has made of late. And even just the wording, the sentence structure got very different. It was almost as if it was kind of the throw-in piece at the end. And to me, it sort of undercut any real seriousness of the first 2 proposals. And just as Kelsey Dallas pointed out, the first 2 proposals could probably get some bipartisan support. Now, it'd be a heavy lift, and it's clearly not going to happen between now and the first Tuesday in November of 2024, but it would have sparked some interesting conversations about where we should be going as it relates to the court and term limits in general. I'm actually one of those who thinks it could be a good thing if it was done properly, both for the court and for members of Congress. And I would just remind everyone, if you're going to have term limits for members of Congress, again, broadly popular with the public, then you've also got to have term limits for the staff of those Senate and House offices. Otherwise, you're just creating another bureaucracy and branch of government of people who aren't elected by we the people. So a lot to continue to digest. We'll continue to follow all of that. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about the fact that it's time to get a new strategy around Iran. Jonathan Rui will join us coming up next, so stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. The accident that killed 3 people at Lake Powell over the weekend is not one we typically see, according to Utah's Division of Outdoor Recreation. Boating program manager Ty Hunter tells KSL News Radio a pontoon being towed encountered large waves, and that tipped it over. In the process, 3 of the people who got trapped underneath drowned.
A traditional pontoon, they are a very stable boat. Now, when they're underway or even being towed, there are some dynamics that the owner or operator needs to know and understand.
And Hunter says most everyone aboard was wearing a life jacket, but things still went wrong. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. 5.1 magnitude earthquake shook Southern California this afternoon. So far, though, no reports of injuries or damage. The epicenter of the quake was in the Barstow area out in the desert east of Los Angeles. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day 49 points. The NASDAQ is up just 12, and at the close of trading, the S&P 500 was up 4. And our KSL weather, we're going to see it warming up, and the smoke will be moving out. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
To celebrate Team USA going for gold, Xfinity is offering a gold medal deal. Now, through August 11th, get our best offer yet with 300 megabit Xfinity internet and 1 line of unlimited mobile for just $35 a month for a year and a free 5G phone. And the action doesn't stop there. Save on some of the biggest names in streaming by adding the new Xfinity Stream Saver with Peacock, Apple TV Plus, and Netflix for just $15 a month. Don't wait. When the Olympic Games end, so does this deal. Go to Xfinity.com/Team USA. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Get the fastest connection to Paris with Xfinity, proud partner of Team USA.
Restrictions apply. Requires paperless billing and auto-pay with stored bank account. Equipment tax and fees extra and subject to change. After promo, regular rates apply to internet and mobile. Stream Saver price subject to change. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet. Actual speeds vary and not guaranteed. Free 5G phone requires eligible trade-in. Select models only.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Michelle Rowe.
Well, we have a grass fire. This is between the main flow of I-15 and the exit to go to 7200 South, so you will want to use some caution going through that area as crews are working on getting that out. Also, a closure. This is westbound 3300 South. You will be stopped at 3rd West. You cannot go northbound I-15 at 33rd South while they're working on clearing a semi-tractor trailer crash. UDOT construction alert. SR201 bridge at 3200 West will be closed for reconstruction starting August 5th for up to 5 months. Expect 30-minute delays during peak hours. I'm Michelle Rowe in the KSL Traffic Center.
Wildfire smoke from California will be drifting through the Wasatch Front, dropping our air quality into the yellow and even the orange range. Highs in the mid-90s until Friday when we get back to 100. And right now, we're at 93 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, Iran's nuclear program has reached a critical juncture, challenging long-held assumptions about prevention and deterrent. The Biden administration, their recent acknowledgement of how proximate they were to nuclear breakout capacity really underscores a need, a necessity to just stop and do a real assessment in terms of where we are. I think for far too long it has been a strategy of hope, hope that Iran won't break through, that they won't get it done. But hope is not a strategy, and it's time to rethink what we think we know about our strategy and what we should actually do moving forward. Jonathan Ruhi is a foreign policy director at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Brilliant piece in the Dispatch talking about the Iran policy, how it has failed, and that it's time for a new strategy. And Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic piece. And as we always say, hope is important, but hope is not a strategy. Give us a sense, first, of where we've been in terms of, I think we really haven't had a strategy. It's been more about hope. But where have we been? And then what is the way we should be looking at a new strategy as it relates to Iran?
Yeah, thank you. So where we've been is basically stuck in the same rut that we've been in since before the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, was first even conceived more than a decade ago, back when we could say that we will prevent a nuclear Iran, and it was inherently credible because Iran's nuclear program was small enough and rudimentary enough where it could credibly be prevented through a combination of military threats, sanctions, and hard-nosed diplomacy. But since we left the Iran nuclear deal, and since Iran has rapidly expanded its program ever since, we haven't really changed our tune. The Biden administration, even the same day that Secretary Blinken, as you noted at the outset, said that Iran could have enough fuel for a nuclear weapon in 1 to 2 weeks. At the same day, they said, we will still not permit Iran to have nuclear weapons, which is hope at best, more like having our heads in the sand. Iran, unfortunately, gets a vote, and what they've done is make their nuclear program unpreventable at this point based on our current policy. And there's a lot of technical and other ways they've gone about doing that. But as I say in the piece, the simple, uncomfortable, awkward, but brutal truth right now is Iran can threaten to break out and produce a nuclear weapon more quickly and credibly than anyone can threaten to stop it. And what that actually does is create a situation where, at this point, because of that, they may not even need to actually produce a bomb or demonstrably possess one, which is smart on their part because until there's a mushroom cloud in the desert, frankly, nobody in the outside world is going to wake up and actually get serious about the problem and reevaluate all these mistaken and outdated assumptions that I laid out.
Yeah, and so let's get into some of that in terms of unpacking that, in terms of what that actually means and how we need to actually move it forward. I think you're spot on in terms of they don't have to produce the weapon because if they really are just moments or days or weeks away, just the threat of that alone puts them in a position of power. And it seems like we continue to function as the United States and others around the world from a position of weakness. So how do we change that dynamic?
So I couldn't agree more with that assessment. What we need to do is basically admit that our policy, it's 20 years old of consistent policy. Both Democrats and Republicans have largely adhered to the same blueprint. We need to admit that has failed. We need to understand that Iran's nuclear program is so advanced in terms of their ability to produce fuel. It doesn't matter so much if it's 3 days or 3 weeks for their first bomb. By the time we blink and inspectors might be able to catch it, Iran could have a full arsenal's worth of fuel. We don't really know how advanced their weapons program is, or their ability to put an actual bomb on a delivery vehicle like a missile. And so what we really need to do is realize there's a lot of things we don't know about the program and figure out a way to force Iran to come clean, not only on its efforts to actually build a weapon, the weaponization process, as they say, but also where it's storing all the constituent parts of its nuclear program, The director of the International Inspectors Agency has been saying for years, and he's increasingly ringing the alarm bell, saying, I don't have a benchmark anymore for where their actual nuclear program is. We have to start from scratch. So the United States needs to work with our European and Israeli allies. We all need to get finally on the same page about this. We've all been pursuing sort of our separate little stovepiped approaches to trying to get Iran to slow its nuclear progress. We all need to get on the same page and figure out a way to force Iran to come clean, because we need to have full transparency before we can even figure out what an appropriate red line is or what resources and strategies we would have to develop to convince Iran to roll back that program, because right now it's functionally a nuclear weapons state. Yeah. And so one of the things I go into a lot is, throw everything out the window at this point, because how has that been working for us so far?
Yeah, I think this siloed approach by each of the strategic nations for sure has produced this kind of a series of everyone has their own hoped for red line strategy, and those lines seem to be getting erased and redrawn and re-erased and reevaluated. And so that never moves anything forward. But all of that, as you said, you have to, before you can chart a course where you want to go strategically, you got to know where you actually are. It's like the old red dot at the mall map. When it says you are here, if you don't understand where you are, it's impossible to chart a course. And so how do we get that transparency that you described in terms of where are we exactly? And then give us just a quick insight as well in terms of Israel in the context of all of this. Obviously, they're dealing with a host of other things in the Middle East. How does that play into this Iran equation?
Certainly. So in order to get Iran to divulge that transparency, as I make clear in this piece, a lot of what that's going to take are things that were, politically are unpalatable here in the United States, and things that we've been intentionally avoiding for 20 years. It means presenting Iran with a credible military threat to either open up the books or put a ton of military pressure on them, because as much as the Iranian regime, truthfully reflecting its own views, spouts death to America and death to Israel, the great Satan and the little Satan, they still understand the basic logic of military force. It's worked in the past, but we've never had a sustained strategy to really threaten to apply that to them. And so, as I say in the piece, this is not going to be easy, but it needs to be part of a serious national debate. If we're going to keep saying we will not permit a nuclear Iran, it's going to require a lot of resources and a lot of risk. And we're seeing this with the Israelis right now. Obviously, given what happened over the weekend, there's concerns of a large escalation with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Israelis have made quite clear, while they do want to try to change the equation so attacks like what just happened can no longer be repeated, they really want to avoid an all-out war with Hezbollah, because that would make everything else we've seen in the Middle East recently seem very small by comparison. But the Hezbollah equation for Israel and indirectly for the United States is wrapped up deeply with the Iran nuclear issue, because Hezbollah is Iran's insurance policy if Israel ever threatens the Iranian nuclear program. And for the Israelis, their concern now is that if there is a large war with Hezbollah, the cost of that on their own would be significant, to say the least. But there's also the risk that Iran could leverage that and threaten to intervene against Israel, and then threaten to intervene against us to keep us out of the fight. And they can do that because they feel as if they have effectively nuclear deterrence already.
Yeah. Wow. Give us one last thought in terms of what you're keeping your eye on that might give us some indication that things are heading in one direction or another, or if the U.S. really will get to a strategic position and a strategic path forward.
So I try not to be too pessimistic, but I think the U.S. I don't see any sign we're going to change our head in the sand approach. What I'm certainly looking for, I think the next precursor is any sign that there could be a full-blown war in Lebanon. I think Israel is intentionally going to try to stay short of that threshold, but the situation there is such that the risk of escalation is very, very high. And the thing I'm looking out for and trying to be very level-headed about is that a war between Israel and Hezbollah will not be contained to just the Israel-Lebanon border. it has potential to become a region-wide conflict, and in a way where Iran throws its weight around as if it is a nuclear power, and I worry the United States will be rather surprised if and when that happens.
Fantastic perspective, great insight. Jonathan Ruhi, Foreign Policy Director at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. And Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us. Great piece.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. We look forward to having Jonathan back. That is a crucial conversation right there, and why you have to actually have the crucial conversation if you're going to get past hope and actually get to strategy that will produce the results that'll be in our best interest as a country. We'll be right back.
Summer is upon us, and do you know what your lawn wants? It wants Revive Organic Soil Treatment upon it. A Revive treatment with fertilization, aeration, and good watering is the key to building stronger roots for a healthy, lush green lawn all summer. Revive fertilizes and moves water and nutrients deeper into the soil. You'll see the difference. Revive is surefire defense against summer drought and skyrocketing water costs. Make the most of your watering with Revive Organic Soil Treatment. Apply Revive Organic Soil Treatment today. It works.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
Gotta change my oil.
How about Valvoline Restore and Protect? It restores and protects your engine to run like new.
Get in the zone.
It restores your engine to, like, factory clean?
And protects.
Get in the zone.
So Valvoline Restore and Protect restores and protects.
Now you can get 5 quarts with an STP Extended Life Oil Filter for $37.99.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, debunking 3 myths about fiduciaries. And you're going to be surprised about myth number 3. Myth number 1. Fiduciaries are too expensive. Not at Trajan Wealth. Our interests are aligned with yours, so we don't need to push costly investments. The more you make, the more we make. It's that simple. Myth number 2. They will only want to sell me something. Absolutely not. At Trajan Wealth, we have hearts of teachers, and it's our goal to educate and empower, not sell. And the biggest myth, myth number 3, fiduciaries are only for the wealthy. Not at Trajan Wealth. Whether you have 50 grand or 50 million, we know it was hard-earned and we'll treat it as such. Let's grow together. So, here's your opportunity for 100% complimentary professional Q&A. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Scott, and I have a podcast called Project Recovery. I talk about my own journey from addiction to a lifelong one in recovery. I'm joined by my good friend and a clinical psychologist, Dr. Matt Woolley.
You know, it's your story, Casey, but we also hear inspiring stories of others who join the show from rock bottom to living a life of recovery.
That's Project Recovery, a show about addiction, but more importantly, it's about recovery. Follow us for free on KSLpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Our goal every day on Inside Sources is to help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and make the news make sense in your world. We have conversations with great thinkers, with great leaders, and great people who are just out there making a difference in the world. Now, we do talk about politics, but only so we can discuss society and culture. And then we explore society and culture so we can discuss principles and the people in America and the state of Utah who actually live them and apply them every day. We bring the best and brightest minds to the state of Utah, and we love to take the Utah model and send it out to our nation's capital and beyond. Every day on Inside Sources, you'll be part of that conversation. To help you understand things in a different way, we'll get you to think again about what you think you know, but most important, we're going to help you have confidence to have crucial conversations in your community and in your own home.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the three people who drowned at Lake Powell over the weekend were wearing life jackets, but they were trapped under a houseboat. Second, a 5.1 earthquake in Southern California rattled nerves but hasn't hurt anybody. And third, Jordan School District has joined a lawsuit against the big social media companies. 93 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, of course, a lot of the news has been focused on the Olympic Games from Paris, France. And, of course, our own big announcement last Wednesday that Salt Lake City would be the host of the 2034 Olympic Games. So a lot of Olympic conversations going on and some great stories, some great triumph moments, some tragic moments that are always part of the Olympic Games. And then, of course, there's the ads, the commercials that seem to be endless as you go through an evening or an all-day version of the Olympics. And those are often inspiring as well. But there was and has been one advertisement that has been played from Google that has drawn a lot of attention and not in the best way. It's one that got my hackles up the first time I saw it, and then I had to watch it over and over and over again. And it's a Google ad that's called Dear Sydney. Now, the Sydney in the story, of course, has nothing to do with the story, but it's Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, a fantastic track athlete, a gold medal hopeful for the United States Olympic team. And I want to play you the ad so you can get a sense of the feeling of this. And the context is that it is a dad describing his young daughter who is following her big hero, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, and wants to write her a fan letter, a hero letter. And listen how this plays out.
My little girl's always been a runner, just like me. I've always thought she was following in my footsteps. Hey, go get her, baby. But lately, she's been looking up to someone else. She might even be the world's #1 Sydney fan. And like Sydney, she's focused on her technique. Good job, baby. Accelerate out the curve. High knees. There you go. She wants to show Sydney some love, and I'm pretty good with words, but this has to be just right. So Gemini, help my daughter write a letter telling Sydney how inspiring she is. And be sure to mention that my daughter plans on breaking her world record one day. She says, sorry, not sorry.
So that gives you a sense of the ad, and that's a big-time head-scratcher for me. So one, if you're writing a hero letter, a letter to your hero, I am sure that both the writer and the person who's going to receive that letter would want to know that it's real. I think it's crazy that in the context of the ad, he said, my daughter wants to show her hero some love, and so it has to be just right. Well, is love produced by AI just right or just wrong? And I think it's just wrong. And if I were the Olympic athlete receiving the letter from a little girl who sees you as a hero, who wants to follow in your footsteps, who even wants to do a little smackdown and break your record someday, I would want that to be in really bad handwriting with some pretty creative spelling, because that's real and that's authentic. And so the whole idea that we can start doing everything through AI, AI is going to have a role, no question about it. But it should not be in a role from a child to their hero. Now, I can tell you, I've written some of those letters over the course of my lifetime. As many of you know, I actually have at my home a wall of fame, all baseballs, and I have autographs from not just great baseball players. Actually, I have very few. I have a few of those, but not many. Most of the balls that are signed, autographed up on my wall, are from people who've made a difference in my life. Coaches and teachers, bosses, colleagues, friends, neighbors, people I've admired that were authors or in positions of significance that made a difference in community or the country. And so I've written letters asking people to sign a baseball. And I cannot imagine doing that through AI. I cannot imagine sending a baseball to one of my heroes with a letter that wasn't in my own handwriting, as awful as it is, and my wobbly spelling, as terrible as my spelling can be, because that's just not real. And so I think of all the Olympic commercial moments, many which are inspiring, some of which can even draw a tear at our house. This one was the biggest of the big misses of these Olympic Games, that to think that we could replace the authenticity of a young child writing to their hero or heroine is so far missing the mark. And so I think we have to step back from that. I think that's a conversation that we need to have in the country. Because like many things about AI, this is one of those things we don't want. Yes, we want AI to make us more efficient, more effective, more productive. All the things. Go for it. Go big. But if Google is saying, hey, AI is going to replace you, the human part of you, AI has no capacity to feel awe or wonder or inspiration about another person, about an athlete or an executive or an author. AI is not that, because AI is not human. And as much as some people want to make it human, it's not. And I want you to just think for a moment of some of the letters that you have kept. Maybe from people just giving you a thank you, or maybe someone who admired your work, or someone who is appreciative of something that you did. And think about how many of those are just little thank you notes in somebody's own handwriting, regardless of how good or how bad, regardless of how wobbly the spelling may be, and you kept it. And why did you keep it? You kept it because it was human, it was personal, and it was real. And I don't care how good AI can get, it cannot get there. It cannot get there. And if you're sitting at home thinking, well, yeah, I want my child to be noticed by their hero, so we're going to send them a letter and we're going to have AI write it for them. I mean, that's way worse. And to me, that's way worse than having the AI write your history paper, because this is so inauthentic. And that relationship between a hero and a young person in particular, I think is sacred space. And AI has no space in it, in my view. All right, well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And if you have a hero, write them a letter today in your own handwriting. It'll make a difference for them. I guarantee it will change you as well. All right, that wraps it up. As you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something real today that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station. Good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Chaleos, and today for Jeff Kaplan, it's sunny but smoky in downtown Salt Lake City, 95 degrees. KSL's top story. The Jordan School District is taking a prominent position in a lawsuit against social media companies, joined by hundreds of other districts across the country. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe is live with that story. Amy?
Maria, the Jordan School District will be what's called a lead plaintiff. That basically means that they'll lead out on this lawsuit. It could also mean they're called by the court to testify about the damages they claim social media companies have caused their students. The lawsuit is going after Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat. District Board member Bryce Dunford spoke today about seeing his own son become addicted to social media.
I have witnessed the consuming power that comes over a young person who is not prepared to swim in those very difficult waters.
The districts claim that social media companies have been negligent and created a public nuisance. They're seeking damages after they say they've had to pay for more mental health services for their students. Reporting live, Amy Kobabe, KSL News Radio.
Housing developers plan to build more than 1,000 new low-income apartments to make Salt Lake's west side more affordable.
Low-income housing relies on two key factors: available land and keeping rent between 30 to 50% of residents' income. So Utah Housing Coalition Executive Director Tara Rollins says that developers see Salt Lake's west side as their best opportunity to meet both criteria.
I would say underutilized land or buildings that were dilapidated, that were easily, purchased and taken down to build multifamily.
Rollins noted developers like to find areas that will help them score funding to build. And the west side, with its existing transportation infrastructure, does exactly that. Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
Progress on a new fire burning near Camas has been stopped. It's on SR 248 between Camas and Jordanelle Reservoir. The fire is affecting the roadway, but traffic is getting through. Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation says the accident that killed 3 people at Lake Powell this weekend is not one that they typically see. Boating manager Ty Hunter tells KSL News Radio a pontoon being towed encountered large waves which tipped it over.
The traditional pontoon, they are a very stable boat. Now, when they're underway or even being towed, there are some dynamics that the owner or operator needs to know and understand.
He says it sounds like most everyone was wearing a life jacket, but things still went wrong. Firefighters near Chico, California are using cooler temperatures and less wind to their advantage against a massive wildfire that has become one of the largest in California's history. ABC's Alex Stone reports.
The Park Fire has now burned over 575 square miles. That's bigger than sprawling Mexico City, or about half the size of the state of Rhode Island, now charred black. 109 buildings have been destroyed. That new number is slightly lower than first thought. It's unclear how many of those were homes. Almost 5,000 firefighters are now on the front lines battling the flames.
A man has been arrested in connection with the fire. He's accused of pushing his burning car down a gully. Our top national story this hour. The White House says it has serious concerns about the results of Venezuela's elections over the weekend, granting Nicolas Maduro a third term as president.
It's absolutely critical that every vote is counted fairly and transparently, that election officials immediately share information with the opposition, and that independent observers without delay, and that the electoral authorities publish the full, detailed tabulation of votes.
That is National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby. The Biden administration is calling on Maduro to publish precinct-level polling data to ensure accountability. Former assistant professor at the University of Utah, Lara Gamboa, says that she's not surprised that Nicolas Maduro would try to cling to power.
I mean, if you stay in power, you keep your riches, you keep your freedom, everything. And if you step down, you just go straight to jail. The choice is quite easy.
Gamboa says that there have been allegations of criminal behavior, including drug trafficking during his presidency, as well as human rights violations. You can hear more about those allegations on the KSL podcast, Hope in Darkness. One person is dead after police say a dump truck ran into a man on his bike in Ogden. KSL News Radio's Adam Small was one of the first reporters at the scene this morning.
Police are telling us this happened just before 6:30 this morning here at 12th Street and Wall Avenue. Ogden Police Lieutenant Will Farr tells me the truck was going north on Wall and was turning right onto 12th when the man on the bike was in that crosswalk.
The male in his mid-50s driving the dump truck didn't notice a bicycle crossing through the intersection and struck the bicyclist.
The man on the bike died on scene. He was in his mid-30s. I did see here that the driver stayed on scene and is cooperating with police. Ace Recycling and Disposal owns the truck. The company told me they have no comment at this time since it's an open investigation. In Ogden, Adam Small, KSL News Radio.
First Look Traffic. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon, Maria. Crews are still working on this tipped-over semi-tractor trailer. Looks like it was hauling a bunch of dirt at 33rd South. You will not be able to go westbound on 3300 South to join I-15. Michelle Rowan, the KSL Traffic Center.
Coming up, Jeff is talking about why buttons are different on men's and women's shirts. Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News is next.
I don't like onions. I'm doing paleo. Do they have gluten-free bagels? You can't juggle every food request for a work event, or can you? EasyCater is the all-in-one tech platform that makes it easy to get restaurant catering for work, with options for any group's size, taste, dietary preference, or budget. EasyCater saves your favorite restaurants and orders, which makes reordering a snap. Need to modify an order? No problem. So when it comes to food for work, make it easy on yourself with EasyCater. Start your order at easycater.com.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Break up with stinky clothes.
Rinse it out. Every now and then I get a little bit tired of the stinks that just will never come out. Oh, Downy in the rinse straight. Every now and then I rinse it out. One wash and it delivers. One wash, it smells so clean. Downy Rinse and Refresh, it's a dream.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes 100% of odor in just one wash. Guaranteed.
Do you know why more homeowners choose Any Hour Services for help when it's time to replace their air conditioners? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and the main reasons people choose Any Hour Services is because of our people, processes, and convenience. People tell us all the time that there's just something different about having an Any Hour Services technician in their home. That's why most of our over 18,000 Google reviews mention our technicians by name. Another reason is our 7-step install process that we call the Any Hour Difference. It all starts with the needs analysis, where you explain what you like and dislike about your current system. This helps us design and size a system that fits your comfort and efficiency preferences as well as your home's airflow requirements. As for convenience, most of our installs are completed in one day. We also have flexible, no-money down financing options available, even if you've been told no in the past. So if you've been thinking about getting a new air conditioner, call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate today. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Spend your workday with a talk show that makes you feel better about the news.
Debbie is the voice of reason, and Dave reminds me of my little brother. Well-spoken, and they're a great team together.
Dave and Debbie, live from 9 to noon, or podcast the show on the app for KSL News Radio.
This is My Minute of News, brought to you by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air, anyhourservices.com. Personally, I don't wear women's clothing. But there was that one time at Halloween, long before it was a political issue, I dressed as a woman. And I won Best Costume in 4th grade. There were no protests, no issues. I just got an extra large piece of candy for Mrs. Schmidt, and that was that. I realized times change, but on that day, I noticed something I never would have known in a million years. Guys, did you know women's blouses have buttons on the opposite side? Yeah, a guy's shirt has the buttons on the right, but on women's clothing, the buttons are on the left. And if a guy tries to put on a woman's blouse, he'll often start fumbling, lacking the dexterity to button up. Now, a lot of women are saying, duh, they know this. But if not for Halloween, I would have never known. And ever since they've invented buttons, there's been a raging debate among historians why women's are on the left